Hello students. So today we are going to go through some of the topics of unit number 3. So as a part of the assignment we have already done the production of polyester, production of polyethylene. Um, then some of you have also done the production of styrene butadiene rubber. Okay. So some of the polymers have been already covered as a part of the assignment. Okay. So today I am going to discuss about the production of nylon, and also a new topic will be started, that is specialty polymers. So specialty polymers are those polymers which are used for specific applications, right? So in specialty polymers we are going to discuss about the conducting polymers. So first we are going to go through the production of nylon. Okay, and in the second section we are going to go through the conducting polymers. So nylon, so I think while we were discussing about condensation polymers, so nylon is a typical example of a condensation polymer. Okay, so nylon can be broadly classified into two types. One is nylon 6, okay, which undergoes self condensation, and another is nylon 6,6 that involves the condensation of two monomers. So one is adipic acid. Okay, one is adipic acid, and the second one is hexamethylene diamine. Okay, so if you see the structure of adipic acid, it basically consists of 6 carbon atoms. Okay, in the backbone, and similarly in hexane diamine, it is having 6 carbon atoms in the backbone. Okay, so when both of these react, so it involves the removal of a small molecule of water. Okay, one molecule of water is basically removed as a part of condensation, and then it forms a CONH linkage. Okay, so it forms a CONH linkage, which is also called as polyamide. Okay, so nylon is nothing but it is a type of polyamide. Okay, in case of nylon 6, it is an intra-condensable polyamide. Okay, and in the case of nylon 6,6, it's a intermolecular condensation polyamide. So if you go through the definition, if you see the definition, the nylon 6,6 is a linear condensation polymer made from hexamethylene diamine and adipic acid. Specific amount of two chemicals. Okay, so the both the chemicals are combined in solution form to form the nylon salt. Okay, now this nylon salt basically means that it consists of both positive and negative ions. Okay, so when both the reactants, that is adipic acid, so one is adipic acid and second is hexane diamine, when both are added in stoichiometric amount, okay, it forms a nylon salt. This salt is first purified. Okay, so first it is purified, then it is polymerized. Okay, so once this nylon salt is being formed, first it is purified and then it is polymerized. Okay, next it is extruded in the ribbon form. Okay, or it is chipped into small flakes or pellets. Okay, now next is, once the polymerization is over, okay, the next thing is, how do we need our end product? Either we require it in the form of, so this is called as ribbon form. Okay, ribbon form means we need our nylon in the form of a fabric, or we need our nylon in the terms of pellets. Okay, so there are two ways through which we can get the product. Either we can get it in pelletized form, or either we can get it in ribbon form. Okay, now these flakes or pellets are melted and extruded through a spinneret into cool air, and nylon filaments are formed. Okay, so from these, so once we get this pellet, they are actually sent to an extrusion chamber, okay, where basically cooling air is actually passed out. So cooling air is actually given, okay, and thus nylon filaments are formed. So nylon filaments are formed through the extrusion, okay. So if you see the chemical structure of nylon 6, so we have already discussed, this is nothing but it is actually nylon 6 is polycaprolic acid, okay. So this is when it is not polymerized, it is called as caprolic acid, and once it is polymerized, it is called as polycaprolic acid or nylon 6. Next is nylon 6,6, okay. So this is the part of hexamethylene diamine, okay. This is okay. This is the part of adipic acid or hexane 1,6-dioic acid, and when both of them condense together, they form a polyamide which is called as nylon 6,6. Okay, that is why it is called as nylon 6,6, because it includes the merger or condensation of two molecules containing 6 carbons each in the backbone. Now we are going to discuss about the production of the nylon, and we will also see that how different unit operations are involved together in the production of nylon. Okay, so this is the flow sheet that you are seeing in the slide is one of the most easiest and one of the I could say one of the most meticulously designed flow sheet for the production of nylon. Okay, so we are having basically three raw materials. So the first raw material is water, okay. Second is hexamethylene diamine that you have already seen, and next is adipic acid. Okay, so we are having three raw materials. Okay, so these are the storage tank for the raw material. Okay, this is that the first one was for the water, second was for hexamethylene diamine, and the third one was adipic acid. Fine. Now you might ask me that what is the role of water? Okay, so since the reaction takes place in aqueous medium, that is the reason we need water. Okay, so water is required just as a solvent. So water, the role of water is that it is used as a solvent for the reaction of hexamethylene diamine and adipic acid. Now all the three reactants, they are actually going into the chamber where the nylon salt is getting manufactured. Okay, so all of them, all the three are being added into this chamber in stoichiometric amount. So all of the three are sent to the this chamber. Okay, so when these all the three are added, so water acts as a solvent, hexamethylene diamine and adipic acid are acting as the reactant. So in this chamber, hexamethylene diammonium adipate nylon salt is getting formed. Fine. Now we are getting the salt in this. We are getting the nylon salt. Okay, in this chamber. So nylon salt is going from this chamber to unit number 2. Fine. Now if you see in unit number 2, we are adding anatase form of titanium dioxide. Okay, so we are adding titanium dioxide slurry into the chamber number 2 where nylon salt is kept. Okay, now why we are adding TiO2? So the reason we use TiO2 is to deluster the fiber. Okay, now why, what do you mean by deluster? You may ask me a simple question that why you are using such words such as deluster, right? So now deluster basically means that it is used to remove the shininess and the transparent behavior of the nylon. Okay, so when this nylon salt is actually formed, it is having a shiny and it is having a very lustrous behavior. Okay, lustrous means it is having a shiny and transparent behavior, right? So to make it more rough, we use this anatase TiO2 slurry, that is titanium dioxide slurry, right? So if we add this TiO2 to the nylon salt, it will make the fabric much more rougher, right? So that is the reason we use this TiO2 slurry, right? So once this TiO2 slurry is added to the nylon salt, it is actually delustering the fiber, and now the whole mixture is sent to an evaporator over here. Okay, so it is sent to an evaporator. Okay, now why we are using an evaporator? So the simple use of evaporator is to evaporate the water that is present in the nylon salt, right? So the simple thing is that we are adding steam from here, from the top, and we are adding the nylon salt, that is deluster nylon salt from here. Okay, steam is coming from the here. Okay, in this way steam is taking away the water which is present in the nylon salt, and this water free nylon salt is coming now, right? Now try to understand that polymerization doesn't happen in this chamber. Okay, so here only nylon salt is getting produced. Fine. The polymerization happens in the polymerization reaction chamber over here after the evaporation process. Okay, so here polymerization happens. Okay, and then a high molecular weight nylon 6,6 is getting manufactured. So from this stream nylon 6,6 is coming out. Okay, now this nylon 6,6 is first pelletized over here. Okay, so using the concept of pelletization, it is getting pelletized, and then from the pellets of nylon we can get the nylon flake. Okay, but our end product may or may not be nylon flake, so we do not stop over here. So some of the pellets are then sent to an extrusion chamber. Okay, now what is an extrusion chamber? So extrusion is a kind of machine which extrudes the molten polymer into desired shape and size, right? So this extrusion chamber is basically used to get the fabric of nylon, to get the nylon fabric. Okay, so in this after this extrusion chamber there is spin packs and spinnerets. Okay, so what happens in spin packs and spinnerets? This nylon 6,6 thin filaments, or we could say thin fabric, is getting produced in this spinnerets. Okay, so this is our end product, right? So the nylon fabric is getting formed at the last, and here we are getting pellets of nylon, right? So if we go through the theory of nylon manufacturing process, so as we have already seen in the previous slide, we are having three reactants: adipic acid, hexamethylene diamine, and obviously water is used as a solvent over here, right? Are added to a reaction vessel to form hexamethylene diammonium adipate. Okay, so this is called as nylon salt. That is hexamethylene diammonium adipate, right? After evaporation, water continues to be removed from the salt solution. Okay, so once the evaporation is done, water is getting removed from the chamber. Now once the water is evaporated, a slurry of TiO2 pigments. Okay, so we have already seen that we are adding anatase phase of titanium dioxide, which is used to deluster. Okay, now what is the deluster? We have already discussed deluster. So deluster means reduction of shiny and transparent behavior of nylon fibers. Okay, so this TiO2 is added to deluster the fibers. Okay, and then it is added to the nylon salt. Now next is the polymerization reaction. So polymerization begins in the reactor where polyhexamethylene adipamide, that is nylon 6,6, is also formed. Now the nylon polymer is then extruded through spinnerets or pelletized. Okay, so the end polymer can be obtained in two forms. One in the form of nylon pellets, okay, and another, it can be formed as a type of fabric, okay, thin nylon fabric, and through the extrusion process, okay. So we have now seen that how nylon is being produced in the industry, okay. Now what are the different physical properties of nylon? So nylon 6,6 is usually more crystalline and more ordered than nylon 6, okay. So nylon 6,6, okay, is more ordered than your nylon 6, resulting in slightly different physical properties. Okay, so nylon 6,6 is more crystalline and ordered than nylon 6, and due to which it exhibits a higher melting point, higher modulus, and low moisture absorption, where nylon 6 has somewhat better ductility and impact resistance. Okay. Now, both the types of nylon have excellent mechanical properties, including high tensile strength, okay, high flexibility, good resilience, low creep, and high impact strength. Okay, so both of the nylon are mechanically uh, very excellent, and they exhibit high tensile strength, flexibility, good resilience, low creep, and high impact resistance. Okay, sorry, not high impact strength. Now, due to their high melting point at approximately 500 to 550 Kelvin and good fluid residence, they also maintain excellent strength and toughness during exposure to hot, aggressive automotive fluids and to hot air, whether humid or dry. Also, nylon is also called as a polyamide. So these polyamide also exhibit excellent resistance to wear due to their low coefficient of friction and good chemical resistance, including oil, bases, fungi, and many solvents. Okay, so they are also uh, wear resistant due to the low friction, due to low coefficient of friction. That is also called as a self lubricating property, and they are also having a good chemical resistance. Okay, now what is the main limitation of this nylon? So the main limitation of nylon is the strong moisture sensitivity, because if you see that the clothes which are made from nylon, okay, so they are very much sensitive to the moisture, and they are able to absorb a lot of amount of water. Okay, and what happens, this water acts as a plasticizer. Okay, so we have already um, gone through that. What do you mean by a plasticizer? Okay, so what happens, this water acts as a plasticizer, and if it absorbs a lot of moisture, okay, so due to the absorption of lot of moisture, it affects the mechanical and thermophysical properties of nylon. Now, application of nylon. So more than 60% of aliphatic polyamides produced are used in commercial fiber applications. Okay, so this includes carpets, garments, seat belts, upholstery, ropes, and tire reinforcements. Fabrics made from nylon have less wrinkle resistance than cloth made from polyesters and are more expensive. Okay, so since these are having the wrinkle resistance is very less for the clothes which is made from nylon as compared to polyester, so they are used in many kind of industries, starting from carpets, garments, and they are also used in automotive industry in the form of seat belts, upholstery, ropes. Okay, and they are also used as reinforcement in the tires. Okay, now next generation nylon is also important. So the second point, if you see, next generation nylon are also important engineering materials. Okay, so they are one of the cheapest engineering plastic and find application in almost every industry and market. For example, in the automotive industry, they are used for wire and cable jacketing, cooling fans, air intake, turbo air ducts, okay, valve and engine cover. Okay, so in automotive industry, they are used for so many applications. Okay. Now engineering polyamides are also used for power tool housing, valves and vending for various machines and pumps, and for many electrical electronic parts including switches, sockets, plugs and antenna mounting devices. Okay. So the first application that you have seen, it is used in the cloth industry, right, extensively. Second, it is used as a prime source in industrial applications, especially in automotive industry. And the third, if you could see that it is used as a main raw material in electrical industry. Okay, so nylon is one of the best polymers, which is not only confined, which doesn't have applications in the cloth industry, but it is also very much efficient and very much widely used, extensively used in electrical and automotive applications. So next topic we are going to start in the video lecture is specialty polymers. Okay, so when we say specialty polymers, it means that these kind of polymers are very much specific in the type of application it is being used. Okay, so some of the specialty polymers are conducting polymers, then comes the block copolymer, then comes the polyurethane, then comes the polyelastomers. Okay, so these are some of the specialty polymers. So today we are going to start from conducting polymers. Okay, so first we will see what are conducting polymers. Okay, how many type of conducting polymers are there, how to synthesize conducting polymers. Okay, and then in the last we will see one example of conducting polymer and its application. Now conducting polymers are those polymers which conduct electricity due to delocalization of pi electrons. Okay, so from your perspective you might be knowing that metal act as good conductors, non-metals act as bad conductors or insulators, right? So from your perspective you know that only metals can conduct electricity. Okay, but it is not only confined to metals, polymers also conduct electricity. Okay, these type of polymers are called conducting polymers. Now you will ask that, sir, how can conducting polymers can conduct electricity? Why they are called as conducting polymers? Now, as per the definition you see, conducting polymers are those polymers which conduct electricity due to delocalization of pi electrons. Okay, so I think you already know, right, that how electricity is getting conducted. So there is a flow of electron, and with the flow of electron, electricity is getting generated, right? Simple. So if you will see that conducting polymers are those polymers which conduct electricity due to delocalization of pi electrons. When we say that pi electrons are delocalized, when a molecule contains alternate single and double bond, right? So if you see, the first example is the example of a pyrrole. Pyrrole is a molecule which contains one double bond, one single bond. Then comes the one nitrogen having lone pair of electrons. Then comes one single bond, double bond, single bond, right? So if you see the structure of pyrrole, it contains delocalized pi electrons in its system, right? Now when pyrrole actually polymerize, okay, it undergoes addition polymerization, and it gives us what? It gives us polypyrrole. This is polypyrrole structure, right? So you could easily see that how pyrrole is getting converted to polypyrrole. Okay, now pyrrole is getting converted to polypyrrole by the method of oxidative polymerization. Okay, so if you see the structure of polypyrrole, polypyrrole consists of delocalized pi electrons in the system, and it is a type of polymer which conduct electricity. Okay, next comes polyacetylene. Okay, polyacetylene. Okay, so if you see the structure of polyacetylene, okay, having a very simple structure, right? I think everybody knows acetylene. It is CH triple bond CH, right? So when one of the pi electron is getting delocalized, it is getting polymerized, leaving one sigma and pi bond intact. So if you see the structure, one sigma bond, one pi, sigma, then again pi, sigma, pi, and sigma bond, right? So in this way it consists of delocalized pi electrons, right? So polyacetylene is also one of the important example of conducting polymers, right? Now after seeing this slide, you might be having a very simple question that how can you differentiate these polymers from the earlier polymers that we have already discussed, okay, as a part of the syllabus. So if you could have seen the example of polyethylene, okay, so once you have seen the structure of polyethylene, polystyrene, okay, so have you noticed that there is any kind of delocalization in the system? No, right? Because once it is getting polymerized, the pi electrons are actually taking part in the polymerization reaction, and thus there is no delocalized pi electrons in the case of other polymers such as polysulfonic acid, polyacrylonitrile, polyethylene. Okay, they don't they don't conduct electricity because they don't have any delocalized pi electrons. Okay, so those type of polymers are used as insulators. Okay, so the polymers which are not conducting, they are only act as insulators. So there are two type of polymers. One set of polymers are used as insulators, which doesn't contain delocalized pi electrons, and the other set of polymers are called as conducting, which consist of delocalized pi electrons. So come to the next. So the inception of conducting polymers. Okay, so when the conducting polymers have been discovered, so it was being discovered in the late 70s by Alan Heger and Dr. Hideki Shirakawa and Alan McDiarmid. Okay, before that polymers were used as insulators in the electronic industry. Okay, now what is the advantage of these conducting polymers over normal conductors? Okay, that is called as metal conductors. Sorry. So in the case of conducting polymers, ion transport is possible. Okay, it exhibits redox behavior. It also exhibits catalytic properties, electrochemical effects. It exhibits photoactivity, junction effect. It is mechanically light, weight, flexible, non-metallic surface properties. Okay, so it is having many advantages over normal conductors. Next, we are going to see how we can broadly classify our conducting polymers. Okay. First type is called as intrinsically conducting polymers. Okay. Intrinsically conducting polymers, they exhibit higher conductivity due to presence of conjugated double bonds. Conjugated double bond means what? There is one single bond, one double bond, followed by one single bond, double bond, single bond, double bond. Okay. So that is primarily seen in conducting polymers such as polypyrrole and polythiophene. Okay. So if you see the structure of polypyrrole, we are having one nitrogen inside the ring. In case of polythiophene, we are having a sulfur instead of a nitrogen. Then it is called as polythiophene. Okay. Next is doped conducting polymers. So doped conducting polymers, they also consist of conjugated double bonds, but they exhibit lesser conductivity, but addition of dopants, Lewis acid or Lewis base, it enhances the conductivity. Okay, so second type of conducting polymers are also called as doped conducting polymers. Okay, it doesn't mean that since they are doped, they have lesser conductivity. Once it is doped, they also exhibit a higher conductivity, but the only thing is that they don't have the intrinsically high conductivity. Okay, that is the reason a Lewis acid or a Lewis base, that in the form of a dopant, is being added to these kind of polymers to enhance the conductivity. Okay, so both intrinsically and doped conducting polymers, they exhibit conjugated double bond, but in the case of dope we add a dopant, and in the case of intrinsic we don't add anything. Next comes the extrinsically conducting polymers. So polymers which are made conductive by blending with a intrinsically conducting polymers. Okay, so some of the polymers are not conductive, though they can be made conductive once we blend it with intrinsically conducting polymers, such as blending of insulating polymers with metal oxides. Okay, so metal oxide actually induces conductivity in an insulating polymer. So once we blend an insulating polymer with a metal oxide, we can get a conductive polymer. Else we can blend polypyrrole, which is already a conductive polymer, and a carbon black. Okay, so carbon black enhances the conductivity of polypyrrole. This is also called as extrinsically conducting polymers. Okay, extrinsically conducting polymers means you are adding an extrinsic substance to enhance the conductivity or to induce the conductivity. Types of conducting polymers. Okay, so there previously we have seen, the previous slide we have seen how we can classify it. Here we will see the types. So conducting polymers which does not contain any heteroatom, and conducting polymers which contain a heteroatom. Heteroatom means atom other than carbon and hydrogen, right? So the conducting polymers which does not contain any heteroatoms, okay, so they are mainly what? Polyfluorines, polyphenylines, polypyrenes, polyazolines, polynaphthalines. Okay, so these are having multiple benzene ring joined together. Okay, if you see the structure. Okay, so what you can do is you can take it as a part of self exercise and just go through the books, or also you can search in the Google and just go through the structure of these. They don't contain any atom other than carbon and hydrogen. Okay, and all are ring structure. Next is polyacetylene. Okay, so this also doesn't contain any heteroatom. And then is polyparaphenylene vinylene. Okay, PPV. Okay, so this contain both aromatic rings and double bonds. Okay, so this is the type of conducting polymer with no heteroatom. Next is where heteroatoms is actually present. So the nitrogen containing conducting polymers, prime examples are polypyrrole, polycarbazole, polyindoles, polyazipines, okay, and polyaniline, right? The sulfur containing conducting polymers are polythiophene, poly 3,4-ethylene dioxythiophene, that is also called as P dot. It is one of the main important polymers that is used in the electronic industry, P dot, right? Next is polyparaphenylene sulfide, that is also called as PPS. Okay, so the different types of classification is what? One is the classification based on the source of conductivity. Next is the classification based on the type of heteroatom. If there is no heteroatom, then it can be classified into this category. Okay, and if it is containing heteroatom, then it can be classified into nitrogen containing or sulfur containing. So types of conduction we have already seen in the previous slide. First is the intrinsic conductor, means it conducts electricity in the pure form due to the presence of electrons and holes. Okay, and next is the extrinsic conductors by adding external impurities, right? So in inherent properties, if a polymer is having the inherent property of conducting electricity, then it is called as intrinsic conductor. If we have to add a dopant to conduct electricity, it is called as extrinsic conductor. Okay. Now, what are the conditions to exhibit conductivity? Okay. So the first condition for this is that the polymer consists of alternating single and double bond. Okay. So the first condition is that polymer should consist of alternating single and double bond called conjugated pi system or conjugated double bond system. Okay. That is called as conjugated system. In conjugation, the bond between the carbon atoms. So second point is, in conjugation, the bond between the carbon atom are alternatively single and double. Every bond contains a localized sigma which forms a strong chemical bond. In addition, every double bond also contain a less strongly localized pi. Okay, so there should be one sigma, one pi, one sigma, one pi, one sigma, one pi, okay, and so on, right? So there should be conjugation, and when it is a conjugated system, then there it should be like one sigma, one pi, one sigma, one pi system should be there. That is the minimum condition for a polymer to exhibit conductivity. Now we have already seen that what are the different types of doping. Okay, so how we can do doping of these polymers? Okay, so what is doping? So doping is actually conversion of a polymer backbone to a charge pi conjugated system. Okay, so once you are adding a dopant, so it forms a conjugated charge pi system, that is also called as doping. So there are different types of doping. Okay, first is redox doping. Okay, next is non-redox doping, then called as photodoping. Next is charge injection doping, and next is electrochemical doping. Okay, so as a part of the syllabus, we are not going to go deep into the type of the doping. Okay, so we are going to see only how doping changes the conductivity. Okay, that is our prime objective. Now dopants may be classified into different types. Okay, so first one is neutral dopants, next is ionic dopants, next is organic dopants, and next is polymeric dopants. Okay, so neutral dopants means they are not having any net charge. So for example, iodine, bromine, okay, AsF2, then sodium, potassium, okay, then ferric chloride, H2SO4. These are neutral dopants. Ionic dopants are mainly chlorate salts of lithium, iron, okay, and then there are organic dopants. Okay, so one of the prime organic dopants is CF3COOH. Okay, so it is also called as trifluoroethanoic acid. Okay, now what happens if you increase the doping level? Okay, so if you increase the concentration of the dopant, how does conductivity increases? Okay, so you could see that when you increase the doping level, so first it increases very slightly, and then it shows a rapid increase, and after a certain point of dopant concentration, it reaches a plateau value. Okay, so after this point the conductivity doesn't increase as significant, so this curve is going to get flattened over here. Okay, this is the flattening point. Okay, so once you increase the doping level above a threshold concentration, the conductivity is not going to get changed, but yes, definitely in the initial stages the conductivity is going to change slightly. It is going to change rapidly in the middle concentration. So the more and more concentration of dopant you will add to the polymer, the conductivity, okay, is going to increase. Now what will happen if you add a dopant? So when you add a dopant, the conductivity increases up to a certain doping level. Okay, already seen. Next is stability. The stability actually decreases. Next is the morphology. Okay, so the morphology of the polymer is going to get changed. Okay, due to the presence of charges. Now we are going to go through one of the prime examples of a conducting polymer, that is polyaniline. Okay, so polyaniline is a conducting polymer of semi-flexible uh, conducting polymers family. Okay, so how it is being produced? It is produced as bulk powder, cast films or fibers. It is one of the oldest known conducting polymers, have been discovered in the 19th century, and commercially it is also called as aniline black. Now, how polyaniline is synthesized? So it is found in three idealized oxidation states. Okay, so there are three isomeric forms of polyaniline. Okay, one is called as leuco. It is called as a leuco merilindin. Okay, that is also a white and colorless solid. Next is emeraldin, that is green salt. Okay, and next is per nigra aniline, that is also a violet solid or violet polymer. Okay, so there are three isomeric form, 1, 2 and 3. Now how this formation of leuco emeraldine is described? So normally this formation of leucomerilidin can be described as follows, where O is a generic oxidant. Okay, so when you oxidize n moles of aniline, okay, then you form the leucoemerilidin isomer of polyaniline. Okay, the most common oxidant that is used is ammonium persulfate. Okay, ammonium persulfate is being used, and this reaction is highly exothermic. Okay, so these are the structure of the isomeric forms of polyaniline. One is pernigranilin, next is emeraldin, and next is leucoemeraldin. Okay, so what kind of difference you could see in the structure? Okay, so what you could see in the structure basically is that there is delocalization of electrons over here, right? So you could see in this structure there is one double bond, single double, single double, right? So you could see that this structure also consists of delocalized pi bonds, and here also, but here we are having three double bonds in the ring, and here we are having only only two double bonds inside the ring, and here we are having three double bonds inside the ring, and here also you can see resonance. Okay, so these are three isomers of polyaniline. Okay, so this polyaniline nanowire is an electrically conducting polymer that is also used as an active layer for sensors whose conductivity change can be used to detect chemical or biological species. Okay, so this polyaniline nanowire is also used in sensor applications where a slight change in conductivity is used to detect the chemical and biological species. Now next is, what are the different applications of conducting polymers? So conducting polymers have many uses. The most documented are as follows. They are anti-static substance for photographic film. So they are used as anti-static substance for photographic film. They are also used as corrosion inhibitors. They are also used in capacitors. They are also used for anti-static coatings, electromagnetic shielding. A second generation of conducting polymers have been used for industrial applications like transistors, LEDs, laser used in flat television, solar cells, and they are also used as displays. They are also used in displays in mobile telephones and mini format television screens. Okay, so You could see that they are having both enhanced mechanical properties and electrical and electronic properties. So you could see that some of the applications where it is used as a shield for computer screen against electromagnetic smart window radiation. Okay, they are also used in solar cells, right? And they are also used as smart windows. Okay.